I think the view we take at Pingar is that if you're going to be in market, you have to be in market. And so the recent decision to move to Hong Kong has been taken after 2 years worth of market visits. So we visited both Hong Kong and China a number of times. And it's taken us 2 years really to get to the point where we're prepared to push the green button and actually make the very large investment that we're having to make to make the market entry strategy work. Well, we work in two markets. First of all, India. We've worked in India for about 10 years, and so we recruit and employ local Indian managers, and clearly they're very conversant with both the culture, the language, and the peculiarities of their particular marketplace. In China, we're taking a slightly different approach. In China, we're actually setting up our initial office in Hong Kong. The reason being we're quite familiar with the Hong Kong setup. It's much more familiar to us. There are a much greater number of similarities with New Zealand. And yet, of course, because we're close to, because Hong Kong is part and parcel of a kind of greater China, it does give us that access. And so far as Pingar itself is concerned, we do employ full-time Chinese language speakers on our staff. So we're able to get over the language issue that way.
Awesome.
Building relationships is very important, particularly in China. As I said before, we've been going to China now for at least 2 years, and although we're only just now setting up our offices in Hong Kong, we've already established some quite meaningful relationships. And so in October last year, we were able to sign a memorandum of understanding with East China Northern University in Shanghai. And since that time, and that was 6 months ago, there have been at least 2 visits by our research team in Auckland to Shanghai to engage with the university. And so we know that there are no quick wins in China. Everything only develops after relationships have been built. And of course in India, again, going back 10 years, we already have well-established relationships. And so the challenges there are not as great. I think the other thing to say about India, of course, is English is very widely spoken. Again, there are a number of similarities between New Zealand and India, not least cricket. So there is a kind of common language that we have. So we take a slightly different approach to India as opposed to China. The lesson I've learned is don't try and be different. When I'm in India, I try and be exactly as I am in New Zealand, and the same is true in China. So when you're with Chinese colleagues, talk about the family, talk about fishing, talk about whatever it is that you would talk about to business partners in New Zealand. And it's part and parcel of getting that personal relationship. So I think one very good example is that when I do business in North America, for instance, the legal contract is very, very important. In China, the human handshake is just as important. We've tried to develop our distribution model in both India and China is by, it's something that sounds a little bit technical, but it's via an API. It's basically making components available to Indian and Chinese software developers. And because they are components, we have the opportunity to constantly update them. And so if we're looking at, for instance, our intellectual property, the way that we remain our competitive edge is effectively by being a moving target. So every month we're able to add new components to our API. So we're not standing there with a single product. Instead, we have a number of components that make up a number of opportunities for developers in both countries to build great applications. The best way, frankly, to manage IP or develop your IP in both China and in India is through innovation. I think the key thing is to keep investing in research and development, and if you do that, if you keep bringing new products to the market, then that frankly is the best and probably only way to guarantee the integrity of your intellectual property.
Okay.
The collaboration, particularly for Hong Kong and China, has been with government agencies like New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, the Ministry of Science and Innovation. We also have a close working relationship with MFAT. Pingar is slightly fortunate in that we do have a global relationship with Microsoft, and so we've managed to leverage that relationship in China. So over the past 6 months, we've visited Microsoft offices in Shenzhen, Shanghai, Beijing, and in fact our new office in Hong Kong is going to be in Cyberport, which is the home of Microsoft Hong Kong. So by leveraging that relationship, we are able to meet their partners in the region, and I think that's one way in which Pingar is going to particularly expand its message in Hong Kong. And
okay.
I think focus is very important. One of the great advantages we have as a company is that we aren't restricted in any way by scale. And of course, both India and China offer masses of scale. Because we produce effectively a weightless product, that can be downloaded by whether it's 10,000 or 10 million people. It doesn't really impact on Pingar, except of course the fact we need to provide the bandwidth and the servers. So we will never run out of product. So that for us is a really key issue in terms of how we address both those markets. So while we are targeting certain sectors, scale per se is not an issue, and obviously that for us puts us at a very, very strong advantage.